Hello, everybody. We're going to get everyone in soon. Welcome to say hello before we start.
Hello.
Hello. Long time no see.
Yes.
What time's it your side, Hilko?
9 p.m.
Okay. All right. So equal. Yeah, I think we spoke about that last week.
Yep.
So that's all good. Just have to keep remembering. All right. So we're going to start off with the live stream now. Andrea, if you wouldn't mind, if you see any more participants joining, if you can just add them to the room. And if you do need any, if you do have any questions, luckily you're in this way, please do raise your hand or, just use the chat feature. That will be great. All right, so today we're going to be talking about your Business Architecture CBA exam. And so your CBA exam is really just to give you some evidence that you understand the principles of business architecture and that you've actually been tested and you can pass the exam. Now, with everything that I do in these live sessions, it's a free flow, so please feel free to interrupt me during the discussion. There will be an FAQ session at the end if you want to do it more formally. But I do advise you to take advantage of the live interaction and just contribute. For those who don't know me, what I do is I help business analysts and business architects achieve their learning goals. So that includes certification and also understanding what the practice of business architecture is. I do have quite a few clients. And just last week, we now have students from 90 countries. And we have just over 9,000 registered learners. So not all of them are using certification courses, but there's a good pack in there. So very pleased about that. All right, so those are your 2 minutes of intro. Let's get going with your CBA. So we're going to cover a few things today. So firstly, what is the Certified Business Architecture exam? Next, how is the exam structured? What are the challenges, things to consider, and then Q&A. So let's start. All right. If you don't know already, Certified Business Architecture, CBA, is offered by the Business Architecture Guild. It really is just about giving you the badge to say that you've learned. Now, I do want to say this to many people who are going through certification or training, and a lot of people get nervous around taking exams. So I encourage you not to be nervous about it because it is just a test. It's not going to necessarily, it's not school or university or anything like that, but it is testing your knowledge. It does take quite a lot of work, so you will find that it is quite difficult, to prepare for, but that's good to have a challenge, right? So what are the benefits? I suppose getting recognized in a community. So if you say you're a business architect, it's good to have a badge. Recently, I watched a TED Talk, and this woman had so many things she's tried. So she's a black belt. She's like a ballet prima. I'm not quite sure what the things are called. She's a businesswoman. Yeah, she does a whole lot of things, and she's just tried them. But at the end of the day, without the black belt badge, all the things that she's done potentially won't have a big impact. So I think it's really important for everyone to at least get the badge at the end of the day. So, and that'll help with your recognition. You will get a comprehensive understanding of the business architecture practice, which is great. And when I say comprehensive, I mean comprehensive, and then the ability to design and implement business architecture. Now, I do just want to highlight that when we are doing business architecture, you do have practical as well as theoretical. I always advise people to first learn the theory before they practice, because otherwise you go on a different loop and you might be doing things that are not quite what would be considered as the standard. You can always change afterwards, but at least understand, what those different specifications are. And it's nice seeing some familiar faces. Yeah. All right. So the steps, I'm covering the basics first, and then we'll get into a little bit more detail. Become a member. That's the only way you can get your copy of BIZBOK. It's worth it in terms of being able to see what other BARCs there are, and there's a lot of community forums, and of course you can challenge these forums. Joseph, nice to see you. I'm glad you have a bit of extra time. Hopefully you can ask a few questions or answer a few questions that your fellows might have here. Request a voucher. So for your exam, you need to request an exam voucher. You have a year to use it. I always think it's best to try do this in the beginning. So rather than, focusing on the study, try get all of the paperwork done up front. This will also set a timeline for you. So you'll know exactly, okay, well, I better get this done by this date. So that is always my advice. Everyone can do their own way of doing it, obviously. But once you've got your exam voucher, then at least you can start scheduling and preparing backwards. And then obviously preparing for your exam. I always say take training. There's multiple vendors that you can consider. Of course, I think I'm the best, but that is up to you to make a decision. So read or study the BIZBOK. Now, there are several options with this. If you're not a reader, you're probably not going to really succeed by reading the BIZBOK. But if you are going for training, you can always use the BIZBOK as reference. Sorry, I'm using my big chair today. So do have a copy of your BIZBOK because you can always go back to reference. I do want to make a point with this, and this is important. The exam is based on BIZBOK 8.5. And so when we design our course, we design the course on the BIZBOK version that you've been examined on. So you will notice that there are some changes that occur. They're minor. I have highlighted those changes in a previous webinar. So from our point of view, we always align the learning with what you need for the exam. Just to highlight, you might look at something in BIZBOK and go, oh, this isn't the same. And that's the reason for it. I do think it's good to obviously go through practice tests. And the reason why you should get training, from any source is really to understand what business architecture is. We can all go and do the quiz questions and take an exam and then try face the rest of the crowd with our questions. Scheduling your exam, that's the cost that the Guild charges for that. So those are your two costs that you will have to account for. So do prepare, if you are going to take that exam, that you are just budgeting over that year, what those costs might be. So we don't offer to do this for individuals, but we do offer to manage this process for, with exceptions for corporates when there's a large corporate training option. So to get certified, it's best to use a vendor, as I mentioned, but what is the purpose of being certified? Again, as I mentioned earlier, it's around the badge, right? So it's proving that you have learned the methods and the skills that are provided in the BIZBOK, and that you can at least have the conversation. I always say, it's the worst thing where you've got a whole lot of business architects who can do the practice, but they can't necessarily speak the language. And then you have all of these conversations that, the people aren't saying the same thing, or even though they're trying to say the same thing. So it leaves space for things to go wrong. All right, so we're getting out of the main areas, and now I'm going to talk into a little bit more detail. So how is your exam structured? You have 50 questions in 150 minutes, which is 2.5 hours. So in terms of your preparation, you actually need to be prepared. They do range from very simple to slightly more complex. And by complex, I mean you would have to take multiple business architecture concepts and put them together. And so although it's multiple choice, so you have 1 of 4 questions that you can reply to, you will need to learn for this. It's not something that people can just, off the cuff go, oh, I've been a business architect for years and years and years, and just nail it. It's going to be a little bit harder than that. It won't be hard once you studied. Once you studied, then it would, 150 questions. Yes, 150 questions in 150 minutes. So once you've studied and you've understood the information, it's not going to be hard to take the exam. This is an easier exam in terms of, if I had to compare it, let's say with BIZBOK or the BIZBOK guide, if you're doing the senior level exams, this is easier, but this has a lot more information that you have to get through. So it's about 800 pages, although you don't have to do the reference models. There's still heaps of content. As I mentioned previously, you might want to have a look at the version control that's in the document, just to see what changes have been made in from the previous versions. All right, so how's it broken down? So you've got these 10 areas. Now, typically with learning objectives, in most of the body of knowledges, they break learning objectives down in stages. Unfortunately, these are your learning objectives. So it's not broken down into a level of stages that you have with other body of knowledges. However, I suppose the system is still relatively simple to understand. So about 4% of your exam, and I'm just giving estimates here so you can work around it. The Guild doesn't give us actual numbers. You will get a number once you've completed your exam, but I'm working on estimates here. So in our program, module 0, which is around the fundamental concepts, who is a business architect, what is business architecture, some of the background to business architecture, is about 4% of your exam. So not a high percentage, but hopefully you get that right, because it's fairly simple information. Then you got your core mapping. So your core mapping, if you remember, I'm just going to flick to that quickly, is around your capabilities, your value stream, your organization, and your information. So this on its own is going to be the biggest area where you'll be asked questions. So that's going to be approximately 20% of your exam total. And then you've got your extended. So just to show you that next, again, these are your extended modules. So policies, strategies, initiatives, etc. These are all part of your extended architectural areas. And then you have business architecture, alignment, and discipline. So this is where you'd bring in things like requirements capturing, where you'd bring in things like case management. So there's several ones that you can include in this particular area. And again, that's looking at about 12% of your questions. In terms of your performance analysis, which is a separate area in your BIZBOK, and as well as in the course that we're doing, which is module 15, that is actually around metrics. It's not quite as pure as the metrics look like, but that's basically this area. But there is a separate chapter for that. And just to remind you that BIZBOK talks about parts. They don't use the term modules or chapters. So we've broken it down into modules, but they kind of group them into these parts. So yeah, you can just have a look, and most of you know this about me. It seems your faces are very familiar, or your names. And then you've got the architect role. Now, I do want to highlight these yellow bits, because actually your module 10 and all of these parts are the highest percentage score. They're over 30%. So these are really important areas. So once you hit what I call module 10, and these are kind of semi-scattered in terms of parts in the BIZBOK, but once you hit module 10, you're going to be asked around several things in the exam. Let me just add a person. So you've got the business architecture role. So this is around 6%, knowing what the role is. And this will be around specifically what the B-Arc will be doing in those particular scenarios. So this one is tied in with this one, which is why they're related. And then you've got the governance. Now, governance is often not really considered. And again, governance is around how do you measure some of the areas, like how do you measure how mature you are as an organization, etc. So the questions here are a little bit more tricky, because they relate to what should you do in certain stages. So this is quite an important area as well, because this whole group, or this module as we call it, is all around how you think like an architect. And so, these top areas is understanding architectural concepts, understanding architectural relationships and mapping. But these really are around, what we do as architects. So you've then got your situation and scenario usage. Now, here is an important thing to remember with this particular one. The situation and scenario is prescribed by BIZBOK. So please remember that when it comes to BIZBOK exam, like all body of knowledge exams, you are going to be doing an exam that is prescribed by what the body of knowledge recommends. So you're going to have to understand what that scenario is and what cross mappings are recommended by the BIZBOK. So for instance, when we look at cross mapping here, there's going to be a link to that and that. So you can see what's being linked here. So I do think it's really important that you understand what BIZBOK recommends in this particular area. And then the knowledge base and the general diagrams around how business architecture is structured. I'm not sure why it's called infrastructure, but I would rather just go with knowledge base, because I think that we've, understand what that means. But very simple amount there. And remember, the knowledge base does tell you the relationships between the different areas. So that's an important component. So I won't leave out IT. This is also quite a big percentage, considering IT here is around the alignment. So what are you practicing as a business architect, and how does that relate to other fields? So this will include data. This will include heaps. Just lost my mind. Enterprise architecture, information architecture, heaps of practices that are more in the technical field and how as a business architect you relate to those fields. So for those who have looked at enterprise architecture previously or looked at any of those other fields, you will notice, and I call this module 16 to 23, that in this section, it talks about what business architects can do in this area. It's not prescribing how you should perform that particular activity. So it's not telling you how to be an enterprise architect. It's telling you how to be a business architect in an enterprise environment. So it's important to understand the relationship. So the types of questions you're going to get here are things like, you know, what is enterprise architecture? And then you'd get another question. Let me just clear my throat. You'll get another question that is around things like, how would you, how would you use capabilities with, let's say, enterprise architecture? So all of these questions, especially these ones at this stage, are trying to link the practice of business architecture with what we might experience in real life. So that's your exam structure. I hope that made sense to everybody. Let me just have a sip of water.
Well, you drank. I have a question.
Good. Give me a break.
Module 10 with the scenarios. Every scenario has like 10, 12 steps of things that architects should do. How detailed will those steps come back into the question? Or is it more general, like you use capability mapping in this scenario? Or is it step 1, make a capability map. Step 2, link it to, or how detailed will the question be?
None of the questions will be too detailed. But what they will do is they will have topic A, topic B, and then they'll ask you how this relationship works. So they will say things like, if you are divesting in a particular product, what cross-mapping would be helpful in this particular situation? And depending on what's prescribed by BIZBOK, they would say product mapping to value streams or something like that, or capabilities to product mapping. So BIZBOK prescribes these relationships. So this is a learn situation. So everything around scenario is read your BIZBOK. That's my recommendation. You don't have to read your BIZBOK around all of these areas. You know, this you can do in multiple ways, like I said, training, but this you have to understand what their scenario is and what they're recommending in their scenario. Does that answer your question?
I think so, yeah, because the steps are pretty detailed, right, in the scenario itself. So it's not going to be easy for them to ask really specific questions, I guess. So they kind of have to.
This is going to be your hardest bit, yeah.
Sorry, can I jump in here?
Thank you, Joseph.
So
Joseph, let me just introduce you.
Okay.
So Joseph has just completed his, well, not just, I think it was a few months now, his CBA. This is a master learner. And so this is why I'm so glad that he's coming today. So yes, there's your intro. Go, Joseph.
Sure. The questions look something like this. Your executive management comes to you and they want you to do X. Which maps must you provide in order to facilitate X? That's the level of detail that I saw in the exam, right? So you need to know the scenarios and what, as a business architect, am I going to apply in order to assist the business or the case to move forward. That is, at least from what I remember from the exam, that is what I remember. And it's not going to be, hey, build out the 12 steps that you need. It's more of, because the 12 steps you need, you're going to have in your BIZBOK, right? But what am I going to need right off the top of your head? Am I going to need and I'm just backing, what Deirdre just said. Am I going to need a value stream map? Am I going to need a capability map? Am I going to need an information map? Am I going to need whatever, and how do those relate? And so that's what the 10 is. It's the application of all the maps to the various business requests that you may get as a business architect. Deirdre, did I say that right?
Perfect. Thanks. Couldn't have said it better.
So I guess the Excel sheet you provided with where you can filter on these steps with the scenarios, I guess that is one of the key things, right? If you know that by heart, then it's going to be easier.
That is your learning cheat sheet, right?
Yeah.
So once you've understood your capabilities and how all of that works, that is going to be your learning cheat sheet. I do advise everybody to, still read the scenarios. So definitely go through them just so that you understand that relationship, because there's only so much little bits we can put on, in a cheat sheet. So when I say cheat sheet, that is just to remind you before any, kind of exam and practice, just to refresh your memory, I suppose. All right, let me, hopefully we've covered most of that. We can come back to that in a few minutes if we need to. Here are your challenges, right? So once you get over these challenges, you should be good to go. So time, you need at least 100 hours. I'm not sure how long you took, Joseph, but that's a minimum of the amount of hours you require to learn and obviously understand the language. So you do have new terms, you do have terms that are related to other practices that you might have not called the same thing. So it's important to understand the difference and to understand kind of the glossary of what is offered in your BIZBOK. Imposter syndrome. This is a big thing, right? For many BArchs who have been practicing or those who really want to get into the field but are very nervous about it. Often you suffer from imposter syndrome because you know how much you don't know, or you at least think that there's things that you haven't heard about before and you're going to get caught up. So just get rid of that. Everyone experiences that, so just get rid of it. Don't let that be holding you back. And I have noticed some people really struggle with the exams because they think that they don't know enough, or that somebody's going to find them out later. As long as you study, you'll be fine. Discipline, that's a no-brainer, right? It's just like gym, something that I'm really bad at myself. But, if you're not going to do it, then that's the consequence. Unlearning. This is such an important thing to remember. If you've learned, let's say, that businesses run off value chains, or that processes are the basis of all change, BIZBOK is going to mess with your head a little bit. So I always say to people, when you go in for your training, you need to empty all your current knowledge and just go in fresh. You can always revert back to what options you think are best afterwards and how you would use them and how you would relate. But I definitely think you need to kind of start fresh, especially business analysts. Business analysts struggle with this the most, especially your senior, your CBAP level. They come from this is how we manage change in the organization. And so architecture, which is around the practice of designing an organization, is quite different from trying to do boots on the ground change management. So do keep that in mind. And the next biggest barrier or challenge that you're going to have with BIZBOK and studying for your exam is the depth and breadth that you have to study. Unlike other body of knowledges exams, where they might ask you surface level questions if you are entry level, this asks you some deep level questions. I always say, like the colors of heat mapping and, terms like laser-like and things like that, which are really low level questions in terms of how important they are to understanding business architecture. And of course, they might have changed the exam since I took it. But certainly I think that you need to understand that the volume of information that you have to capture is quite intense. It's completely doable. We've got, you know, hundreds of people who've already got certified, so it's completely doable. I do say if you've got business experience, then this is the type of thing that you can learn because you can relate to it. I think for those who come in straight out of university or something might struggle a little bit more just relating it in the workplace. So the breadth and depth, there's a lot to be covered. We do break that down into what you have to learn. So for those who read in BIZBOK, my advice always is use BIZBOK as your reference, but go through whatever training to learn and understand architecture. All right, things to consider. Your time and schedule. So lots of people I'm just going to talk basic stuff here, right? And this is just reminders. Schedule in advance. A lot of people book, you know, holidays and they go away. We know that June, July, for most of the, especially those from Canada, it just, you know, nothing happens during that time. So don't think you're going to book by then. Just make sure that you've scheduled, you know, you've obviously scheduled your exam in advance, and then you go in and preparing all you need to do. And I say, if you are going to take a year to do this, then make sure that you're doing, you know, 2 to 3 hours a week consistently to build up your knowledge and just grow your knowledge. Hopefully you'll do it a little bit faster than that, but that's up to every individual. Choose whether you're going to do this online or at a venue. Again, you want to get cheap prices if you have to fly anywhere. There's pros and cons in both. Obviously, the biggest con with using it online is that if you need technical support, it's not going to be available. But the biggest pro with doing it online is that you can do it in your own time, in your own place, under your own conditions. But be aware that any online exam, you cannot have anything in the room. You can't have background. You've got to show everything, and you'll have somebody watching you all the time. And I believe that you can only use Chrome. So you can't use like Safari or any of those other ones. I could be wrong, but that's what I last heard. So yeah, do consider that. Obligations, obviously there's a cost. Credibility. I don't advise people to just go and do drills. I don't. I'm not saying people don't do that. But if you want to really take the most advantage out of joining the community at the Guild and being able to ask questions, like people like Joseph, who like to challenge and ask questions, it's good to have a basis on which to work. Practice scores, aim for 75%. If you don't have to score that high, then lucky for you. But that's a good percentage, at least consistently scoring that. Time of day, do consider that as well. Because, you know, if you're like me, if it's going to be in the afternoon, I'm not going to score very well. But if it's in the morning, that's probably the best time to do it. Obviously not 5 a.m., but a little bit later would be good. All right. Exam prep. So as mentioned before, 150 questions in 150 minutes, 1 minute per question. There's a new set of readiness tests that is free on the Guild. It's free on our site. I'm sure there's other sites that have it too. And this is a great opportunity to get 33% or 33 out of 150, should I say. It won't be 33%, pass marks. So do use that. And if you're just going to memorize it, then that's what it involves. It's not going to get you the score that you need, but it will help you at least pass some of the basics. And then obviously prepare your drills. So you want to know how much time you're spending in the different modules. based on what I mentioned earlier around the percentage. So if you are struggling in this area, you need to put a little bit more work into it. And if you don't quite understand all those concepts, yes, and obviously this is the bulk of your work, but you need to know this before you can even go and do the cross mapping and scenarios. Okay, once you've finished any training that you've had, you need to do 3 full drills. See if you can do 2.5 hours practice drills. You can try it at different times of the day and see how you score, and aim for a 75% pass mark. And the reason to do those drills, it's easy to do a 30-minute and then go, oh yeah, ace that. But it's quite different to try to do 115, 1 minute each. That's a whole different kettle of fish. So I do suggest that you focus on, actually doing a longer drill, and then booking your exam. So you can either do that before, you can register for it and you can book, within that year, or you can look at booking it when you're ready. So that's entirely up to you. And again, you would choose the different formats that you want to use. So technical support, if that's your problem, then try get to a location. If it is location is your challenge, and you prefer to do it in your own time, yeah. Okay, yes, I can elaborate on the readiness test. So a readiness test, this is what we call it. These are tests that I do before anyone starts training. So you can understand how close you are to, understanding the BIZBOK. These tests are provided by the Guild. So these are actual exam tests. They're provided by the Guild. And so this is already giving you 33 questions out of the 150 that you are highly likely to be asked. The Guild itself do randomize their questions. So it doesn't mean you're going to get 33 in the exam, but it is a good way to start. If you at least, if you're getting 20 questions that you know already, then that's a great start. So that's what I mean by readiness. It's us testing you as to how many you know. So don't be stressed about that at all. And then the next one is around the fact that this is actual exam questions that is provided by the Guild themselves. So absolutely take advantage of those questions. That would be a good idea. Does that help your question, Jabari?
Yes,
Okay.
it does. Thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, and then obviously I want to tell you the benefits while winter. So enhancing your career, earning your peer respect, increasing your earnings. This is definitely for those going from BA to BARC. This is definitely the next step in terms of earnings, and then resources, networking, etc. So I do advise this for everybody, is to get the badge. It is not the be all and end all. In fact, I recently wrote a blog about this, that don't assume that you're just going to get a job or that you're just going to get career enhancement. What this does is it invites you to the table, and this is only one step in growing your career. So I don't want you to think that this is the only step involved. There are multiple steps involved in growing your business architecture career, so do take advantage of those. So that's me. Now it's question time. If anyone has any more questions, or you want me to go back and show you any of the elements that we discussed earlier.
I have a question. So I've been trying, did my exam, I did my practice on all of that with your Agora Insights. I've been doing the practice drills for a while. I did the under 50 questions actually last week for the first time. I finally gained the courage to do it. And so I sat myself down. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go through all of this, and yeah, so I scored more than 80%. So I was very happy with the result, being the first time. Although I don't know, I didn't calculate my time for the first time. I didn't put a timer to not stress myself. But the question is how close to the exam are those practices? Are exactly the same, or close, or I'm going to expect a different type of, not even questions, but like answers? Are there like open answers, or I don't know, just surprises in the exam itself, or it's
Well, I
actually
think Joseph would be the best person to answer if he's available. But I feel that they're very close. As I mentioned, that there's absolutely no way we can fully know nor understand, what is happening. But we've structured in that way, building all the components. So, Joseph, great, you there?
Yes, I am. The answer to that is they're close enough, right? Which means conceptually there is not much of a difference, but you have to be able to translate the concepts from one to the other. They are not exact, although I will say there may have been a couple that were close, really close, maybe 99.9% there, but the concepts behind the questions, if you know them, which I can honestly tell you guys, I lived those tests for a while, like so imagine learning a language. And that's how I took this. Like I was going to learn French, or I was going to learn Spanish. And the best way to do it is to immerse yourself in it, right? Real life practical application to what you're doing in the homework assignments. And then just every living, I wouldn't say every living breath, but a few living breaths where you're taking those quizzes over and over. You're analyzing the questions that you get wrong, go back to the videos and figure out where you missed it, or go back to your BIZBOK and figure out where you missed it. You'll become versed if you use that methodology, because they are definitely close enough that you'll get it. That's all I can say. That and the cheat sheet, but you'll get it. So conceptually, they're the same. Right? Practical application, there is some of that, which there's no way you can get all that on one practice test, right? So, but yeah, you just keep going. I just kept going through them and through them and through them until I understood it all, until I could just rattle off the answers, and then went and took the test. And it definitely, it lines up, but it's not exactly the same. You're not going to be able to rote memory all of it, but if you can conceptually memorize all of it, you will get through this test easily, is the best way to put it.
Right. No, thank you. That's really good. But yeah, no, I was just also scared of open answer questions because the line is very gray. I do this work already. I work in solution architecture from almost 10 years, so sometimes the answer is so gray that you give an answer, it's wrong, and you're like, but it could be the other way, couldn't it? It could, because it's debatable. But just maybe aside from my architecture rant, my other question would be, what's your sorry, what's your score comfort? I scored happily 83, 85%, I think, and yeah, I was very happy with that result. Should I keep drilling the 150 questions until I consistently score above 80, or should I go for 90%?
Are you asking me that question?
Yeah, exactly, because you gave that answer before. I was like, when were you happy about? Because I like the answer you gave.
I was happy because I wanted to be really confident going in, and Deirdre saw my test scores, so she knew how they were going, and I was not happy at 80%. I was not happy at 84%. I would say I got happy with, on the three segments, 90, 92, and 98. So that means I knew it, right? And I just kept, well, and that's just because I didn't want to see if the passing score is a 70, right? I thought if I could get through Deirdre's tests at 90%, I would probably be at the mark, right? Yeah. And I'm not doubting Deirdre's tests. It's just, this is an application of a brand new concept, right? And I did have to do what Deirdre did. I had to wipe my brain out completely and think like this, right? Think in the components that they have put out there, and then go, okay, what do I need? I took all the mini quizzes until I scored a minimum of 95. I would just kept going. And then if I missed, I went back and figured out where I missed, or I dive into the BIZBOK. And here's another thing. I will give you this too. One of the hardest parts I had was understanding the difference between the lean Six Sigma and the actual business architecture guild, and where's the difference. I actually went to Google and looked up, show me what Lean Six Sigma is, and then try to make that connection. So not everything you want to know is going to be there sometimes. And I'm not knocking Deirdre's course. I'm just saying I dove deeper, and just until I felt like I could just rattle these things off, and not from memory, conceptually understanding. And I will say this, I still didn't get all of it, right? There's no way to get all of it. But overall, I would say I was happy at 92% cumulative for the 150 and 95% across the board. And what I would do is I would randomly, so I'd get a run. This is another little hint. Google has random number generators, and I chose 1 through 24, and I just simply would roll the dice, and that's the test I'd go take and see how I would test. And I did that for 3 weeks. 3 weeks, I'd randomly pick one. So I wasn't going in a pattern. So I just randomly pick one and go take it. And that would help me understand where I was really at, right? Once I got through all 24, right? So that's another method to not let your brain get settled on one part. Just take a random number generator and go 1 through 24 and take the test. I hated it when it was 1 through 4, you guys, because that was 50 questions, but that's a whole different level. But if you do that, you don't let your brain settle into, okay, I'm just going to do this. Well, you're going to master that concept while you're forgetting the rest of them. Do the random number generator and do that. And then once I got to about 90%, maybe 92%, I felt like, let's go do the 150, right? And I did, and that just get faster and faster and faster until, I don't know what my last ones were, but I do know where I struggled, and I knew that when I was done, I would struggle with that in the business architecture level too. So I still study it, but that is just another little study hint I can give you. I can tell you that Deirdre's training was excellent. I can tell you that her tests are more than adequate. But if you can't get it, Google it. There's somebody else out there that may, but I was able to get 99% of it, other than the, Lean Six Sigma, because I really wanted to understand that a little more from this. And the cheat sheet. Okay, let's not go for it. And the roles cheat sheet too. There's one out there for roles. Remember that too, because that's the building of practice. And if you know that, you can apply that to building a practice. So you know what a mapping expert is, what a business architect is, what a senior business architect is, what a mentor is. Those questions are on there. There's not a lot of them, so don't go spending hours on that. But it was definitely helpful. So does that answer your question as to where my comfort level was?
Yeah, no, it's really cool to hear your experience, Joseph. Thank you for sharing. And I agree on, I really enjoyed the fact that Deirdre program is structured with 24 mini modules. So it really helps because now that I'm, after that, I went through a bit of library, a bit of BIZBOK, going through the tests, and it really makes sense because all the parts are kind of coming together. So, okay. I think the next time then I will just start timing myself and mix it up, as you said as well. Just don't get used to one thing.
Joseph, one other question that I have for you is, what has it done for you in the workplace after doing this? I mean, we spoke about several things like confidence and imposter syndrome and all of that. What does it mean for you?
Well, honestly, right now I'm the business architect for Globe Life, and I've been given the freedom to almost build out a practice under one of our senior directors. So what I've done is applied, and I can even give you the chapters if you want, 1, 2, 4, 5, 8, and I've actually gone into the solutions architecture world now. So it has really it drove my career through the roof really fast, like really fast. But part of that, guys, is I was applying what I was learning to my current business situation. So the homework I was handing in were actual things that we were dealing with here. So I built an organization map that applied to Globe Life, well, without our terms on it, by the way, or an information map, which, by the way, caused a mess anyway. My information map did. And and since then, I've taken that stuff and I've built it. Just using that practical application helped me understand how everything ties together. And again, the hard part is staying out of the processes, just like Deirdre said. When you realize that your job is to build, in the way I look at this as a certified business architect, my job is to look at the house and tell you where the windows go, tell you where the faucets go, tell you where the electricity needs to be, tell you what kind of alarms need to be on there. I'm not going to tell you how to do it, but if you come to me and say, what happens if I put this door here? I'm going to need to be able to tell you the impact on the rest of the house, right? And that is the non-technical way to look at it, and stripping all technology out and going back to business and only realizing that what business architecture does is facilitate solutions architecture. It does not do anything more than doing that, because I can have an impact analysis. I now understand what the business does. If you keep that mindset all the way through and you cut out technology, because the only thing in there is how do I relate and how do I foster technology, you will do just fine. But it is about what the business does. And so I've gotten the privilege, and my manager just basically said, just wind up and go, to be able to do this. And it's done wonders. It's done wonders for my career. It's done wonders for others that are coming along eventually. And it's slowly becoming an accepted practice in our organization where it didn't even exist 4 months ago. So it's been good. I would say better than good in most people's book, but it's been good. So yeah. But no, I'm kidding. It vaulted. There's just no other way to put it. It just vaulted me forward out of the process analyst, out of the transformation analyst role into. So what it did is it moved me out of the how into the why and what, which is where I like to be, by the way. And so I don't consider how I'm the bridge, which business architecture is. I'm the bridge between what the business wants to do strategically and how they're going to do it, and what is the impact of that, and how am I going to measure KPIs. That's what that is. So it did a good job. It did a good thing for me.
This is why Joseph and I are planning at some point a podcast together, just so you can share this learning. But great story. So I'm super happy that you joined us. So Sergio just apologized that Joseph, he was wanting to stay longer, but he's got other.
I'm here. Sergio left.
Yes, no, I know that. He's apologized to you.
Oh, sorry. Oh, that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah. All right. So thanks, everybody. Are there any more questions? And Joseph, you've been absolutely amazing. This session is recorded, so I think that there will be a lot more people that get value from it.
I have a last quick question, if that's okay.
Yes, go for it. This is the opportunity.
You mentioned that it was getting the CBA is one of the steps for your career. What kind of steps do I have to think about in addition to these?
You have to think about joining a community. Definitely join the Guild on LinkedIn. There's several business architecture communities. Do join them, because this makes a difference in your career development. The next option, I would say, is start sharing your knowledge. So we're in that stage now where Joseph has already shared his knowledge, but what that does is you are developing a level of authority. And, once you can start explaining to people, I mean, Andre had the same experience when he was in the workplace, but once you can start not only just telling people about architecture, but showing people, writing good information, just having a webinar or podcast or something, that will give your employer, your customer, or whoever you are working with confidence that you know what you're talking about. It's one thing to go and write an exam and come out with a badge, but that's not enough. You have to join that community and you have to be sharing knowledge, because that gives you a sense of authority in the in business architecture or any practice. Actually, those things make sense. Hope that helps.
All right.
So one last thing before we go, remember, sorry, Joseph, you carry on. I'll do the last thing before we go.
No, I was done. I just accidentally hit the unmute button.
Oh.
I didn't have anything. I, for once, didn't have anything to say.
It was great meeting. I remember that conversation. I think we ended up speaking for hours. But okay, so one last thing. Remember when you're writing for the exam, when you're writing the exam, you need to be exam ready. So just make sure that you've done your quiz, and then your full exam drills. So as Joseph has mentioned, I'm just reminding everybody, because that's why you're here today, is to understand that exam. So yes, thank you, Hilko. That's where you can book a one-on-one with me. So do make sure that you are getting through the knowledge, and then you are getting ready for your preparation. I always advise to do it as often as you can if you are doing the quiz questions, because you do lose information over time. So if you are planning to do your exam in 3 weeks, you've finished your course, you've done all the drills, not the drills, the quiz questions, and then you've decided you're going to do your exam, set aside 2 to 4 weeks, and I'm talking time here, to practice your drills. Yeah, and then you can be an authority like Joseph. So that's a great news story. Thank you for sharing.
No problem.
All right.
Excuse me.
Thanks, everybody. I think we can call it a day. So we have 4 minutes left. You can use it, or we can say goodbye. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to say goodbye. Stop the live streaming. Have a great day and enjoy the last few days of November. And do check out my blogs. I've been spending a lot of time writing. All right. Thank you. Cheerio. Bye.